What's up everyone and welcome back to my channel. So I think Hope did not make an appearance last time, so had to get her in this time. If you are new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Ariana. I do a ton of photography content on my channel, and today's video is going to be all on my new film camera that I picked up, the Contax G2. And yes, this is a box for it, which is absolutely incredible. But a little bit of background information on how I acquired this camera. A few months ago, I went into my local camera store wanting a film 35mm point and shoot camera. I wanted something that I could just carry around for everyday moments, and I often found that even though I absolutely loved my Olympus OM10, because of the fact that it was manual focus, there were just shots that I just wouldn't go for or would give up on while trying to get that shot because I couldn't focus it in time. So I really wanted a point and shoot for that reason. It was purely really for the autofocus. So I went in and they had two available cameras on their site that really caught my eye. The Contax G1 and the Yashica T5. Both of them were in great condition and both of them were pretty much the same price point. But I completely fell in love with the look and the feel of the Contax G1. It felt really good in the hands. It was decently heavy, which I know some people love, some people don't love, and overall it just felt like a nice quality camera. Well, it turns out there is something in the camera, whether it was the lens or the body, we still don't know, and since we don't have a secondary Contax G1 body or a secondary lens to go on the mount, we couldn't really test which one it was that was causing the issue, but something between the connection or one of the pieces and components allowed the camera to not be able to focus. So my first two rolls on that camera were pretty much completely out of focus. Unfortunately, because we were never able to really come to a conclusion, I didn't want to spend all of the money to go find people to repair the camera, and on the other side of it, neither I nor the camera store wanted to spend the money to get another lens or to get another body, because at that point it is almost the cost of what I paid for the system together. I did happen to stumble upon, they had this in their inventory when I went in to get the refund, and they happened to have an almost brand new Contax T2 sitting there on the shelf. And it was incredible. So basically the original owner of this camera had this gifted from her husband, and she rarely, if not ever, used it. So now it is mine, and it also came in literally its original packaging with the warranty on it and everything, and it came in this beautiful, beautiful Contax box that just pops right open, and came with the camera in here, you know, a spare battery, the original warranty information, which is obviously not eligible anymore, and then it also came with the camera itself and a little Contax carrying pouch. So this is the beautiful Contax T2. Just pops right open like that, which I absolutely love. So I wanted to just spend some time talking to you guys about this camera. I've shot one roll of film officially through it, and I am actually almost through my second roll, if you can see that there. I've got some first impressions, and I was just so excited about this purchase, I had to make a video about it right off the bat. So this is a point and shoot camera, that's why I got it. Everything is completely automatic, and on the camera itself, there is the ability to manually focus it. Will I ever use this feature? Probably not, but it's there in case I want it. And another thing is obviously the notch that says AF, which is going to be your autofocus. This is primarily where I shoot. And then if you actually look at the lens itself, there are a few aperture settings here. your typical aperture values, as well as the flash setting, and then another flash setting specifically for if you're capturing people in it to help with the red eye effect from flash. The lens itself is a Carl Zeiss 38mm 2.8 lens. The one thing I will say though is you cannot actually manually put it on 2.8, otherwise I would pretty much leave it there at all times, I think. And the reason for that is because when you actually adjust the lens where it is at the 2.8 setting in green, that actually means auto aperture. So it'll only use an aperture of 2.8 if it needs the extra light to get there, and not because you actually tell it to use an aperture of 2.8. The other values though are set by yourself if you move to those values specifically. So it is a fixed lens. It is a beautiful quality fixed lens. It has amazing images, and Carl Zeiss lenses are known to be very, very good. So that has never been a concern for me. The next I would say is, yes, as you saw, there is a built-in flash in the camera, and the flash is actually very, very strong. And it just makes everything look like an old school memory, which I actually really love the look of that. And then the last thing right off the bat that I want to point out is the fact that it automatically loads film for you. It auto advances to the next exposure. Of course, you saw the counter at the top of the camera that shows you which exposure you are on, and it does read DX coded film. Another thing that I wanted to point out that I think is really cool is the exposure compensation dial. A lot of new cameras, digital cameras, this is a pretty standard feature in, but it is very interesting to see it within a film camera, because that gives you the ability to over or underexpose it without having to know the settings to do so. Okay, my mom called me, so I have no idea where I left off, but like I said, exposure compensation, very cool feature to have. So I wanted to also get into actually shooting the camera. Like I said, I've only shot one roll of film through the camera so far, and it's a very trusty roll of Portra 400. This is the film stock that I use to test all of my new cameras, because that's how I can really compare and contrast based on the shooting experience. The first thing I would have to say is actually a con of the camera, and this is something that I actually got in the Contax G1, so it's a little bit unfortunate that I don't get this in the Contax T2, and that is two kind of components. It's all part of the auto focusing piece. So when you let the camera focus or use autofocus, it is pretty much the same as any other camera that supports autofocus. You half press the shutter down, and then the camera will focus on a subject, and then you fully press it down to actually take the image. One thing I will say that I thought I was really stressed about at first about getting another faulty camera is the fact that when you half press the shutter down on the T2, there is no feedback whatsoever on focusing. The lens does not move, it does not make a sound. It is not until you fully press down the shutter button where the lens will actually adjust and focus on your subject. The only feedback that you get from the actual camera that you're focusing on something and you don't even know what that is the fact that in the viewfinder, it'll either have a little green circle for if something's picked up in focus, all good to go, the camera thinks it's doing its job and is ready to take the photo, or you'll get a little red arrow that'll tell you that the subject is too close to focus. So that's kind of the only feedback that you get with the G1 even then, and like with digital cameras nowadays, you get that feedback on what you're focusing on. With a digital camera, you can actually see the viewfinder change if you're using an electronic viewfinder, and even with the G1, it told you what distance it's focusing at, so you can kind of tell, like, hey, if I'm focusing on a person in front of me and it's reading infinity, then I know the camera's not focusing on the right thing. With the T2, you don't get that. Granted, if you're really using this as a very quick point and shoot, just point and shoot, yeah, you wouldn't really be focusing on that, but as someone who has had all this experience being able to see what is actually being focused on, it's definitely quite challenging to just let that go and let the camera do its job. So the next thing is that because the lens doesn't actually move until you take the photo, one thing that I was a little bit nervous about, and luckily has not been an issue to me so far with my limited experience of shooting one roll, is that it almost feels like there could be a little bit of motion blur. I almost have a little bit of a shaky hand. The camera itself is like pretty light and pretty small, and it's not like a lens weighing it down in the front that stabilizes it. So it really did at some points feel like I was shaking the camera as I was fully pressing on the shutter and taking the photo. If you shoot with a very fast shutter speed, which I usually try to do anyways, that will not be a problem, but it is something to be aware of, especially if you're used to shooting like me with slightly heavier cameras or heavier lenses on the camera. Overall, I love it though. I love the way the images came out. I think once seeing my roll of film developed, it gave me a lot more confidence in shooting with this camera. I do plan on even using it at my own wedding and carrying it around, and my photographer will be using it and taking a few shots with it as well, so I'm very, very excited about that. The lens and the image quality is still phenomenal, beautiful, like every other person says. It is not a cheap camera. Personally, I think I would have gone still with the Contax G1 because of the price point and what you were able to still get at that price point. For value, I don't know if this would be my first choice always, so that's just something to keep in mind. And in general, you know, like I said, I'm really enjoying the camera so far. I love the images that came out of it in my first roll. I think they're super fun, and they're exactly why I got this camera to begin with. So if you have any other tips or honestly concerns about the camera, be sure to leave your feedback down below. I would love to hear it and love to be prepared for anything that I may need to be prepared for sure. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you enjoy content like this on film and digital photography. I'm sure as the winter months come through the US here, I will be shooting a lot more with my X Pro 2 as well. So look out for content on that going forward. And thank you for watching this video. I will see you all in my next one.